We're doing an invention. It's priority.
And the only way to do great work is to love what you do.
Live life as though everything is rigged in your favor.
Ignore the noise. Have faith in yourself. Recognize that you are an entrepreneur.
From the campus of the University of Maryland's Robert H. Smith School of Business, the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship presents Bootstrapped.
Welcome to Season 4 of Bootstrapped, a Dingman Center podcast. I'm Ilana Fine.
And I'm Joe Bailey.
And before we get into today's episode, Joe and I just wanted to thank our alums and friends on the West Coast for hosting our first ever Bootstrapped on the Road at the Google Community Center in San Francisco. At that event, we were able to interview Jeff Markowitz from Greylock Ventures and Peter Hazelhurst, who's a serial entrepreneur and currently with The Perfect Sip, both hopefully future guests on Bootstrapped. But it was exciting to be able to be out on the West Coast and take the show on the road.
I couldn't agree more, Alana. It was great to share the stage with you and our fantastic guest and see so many great Smith School alumni and our connections out there on the West Coast. It was a great event. Thank you.
And so, as all of our listeners know, each episode of Bootstrap features a funder or founder from the University of Maryland and Dingman Center community. And today we welcome Dan Sugarman, who is a computer sciences alum and currently CEO of Columbia-based startup Zentail. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
So, Dan, I think we'll kick off the show just to rewind a little bit because you've had a very interesting journey and have had a few pivots along the way, and actually first worked with the Dingman Center, with your first company, HD Trade Services. So I thought we'd quickly start there. Just tell us a little bit about that company and then walk us through where you are now.
Sure, yeah. Actually, to start HD Trade Services is still the same company. We still maintain all the same investors and corporate structure. But yeah, HD Trade Services, we started off, actually I was, after going through University of Maryland, I was getting my PhD in computer science at Stony Brook University. And I had a friend from college. We were in the same fraternity. He was, doing finance and entrepreneurship, him and CEO, Daniel Sperling Horowitz. And he was working on this crazy international business. There was all this fraud going on in the gray market, and he was trying to develop technology to make that trade more efficient, to inspect the technology and make sure that everything kind of gets where it needs to go. So I got more passionate about helping him solve that problem than I did in my thesis, and I wound up dropping out. That's when we began our relationship, and then we got into Y Combinator in the summer of 2012.
Dan, one of the things that has a recurring theme here on Bootstrapped is students sometimes find themselves at Cornerstone hashing out good ideas. Is that where this hatched by any chance?
No, it was actually at a graduation party, but yes, it was over many beers.
So a common theme nonetheless. Okay, so you're running HD Trade Services. You go through Y Combinator. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so we came out. We had pretty good growth. In the beginning, it was very capital intensive to roll out. We had some virality in the fact that we were these warehouses were communicating shipments to each other, and we had some push notifications to other places that were then asking about the software. But then to actually set up, it was all international, and it would have been very capital intensive to really push this forward. So we kind of realized that we didn't get the funding that we would have needed to roll that out. We got a little bit of funding after YC. But we started to look for business models that took a lot less capital to get started. We needed to figure out, we knew what our runway was. We needed to figure out how we're going to make money. We started measuring, things in Subway sandwiches at the time. And what we figured out is that we made all these great relationships. We tried a couple different things, but we made all these great relationships with the warehouse side software. There's these big warehouses with lots of products in them that they could ship. And they were doing most of their distribution through wholesale, and we were going to link into them and link them to sales channels like Amazon, where we started. Dan,
if I could just interrupt for a moment, because for many of our listeners who are familiar with the startups and venture space, like Y Combinator is hitting it big time. I mean, they have a very small kind of ingestion of talent and companies, and you were able to do that. What was that like?
Yeah, Y Combinator was a crazy experience. We're really grateful to partake in that. And, you know, it was just insane to see some of these companies. There were so many companies that were doing extremely well that are no longer around. And there's also so many companies that, you know, no one really cared about that are now some of the biggest companies out there. You know, in our batch alone, there's been a lot of really successful companies that we were able to see. And you know, these are our friends that we would go to the bar with. You know, one of our closest friends, Brian Armstrong, started Coinbase. And obviously that's now the largest Bitcoin company. No one at the time really cared to invest in Bitcoin, even though it sounds kind of crazy.
And I know we're going to talk about some of the pivots that happened after you left Y Combinator, but did that experience then help create the environment for future success?
Yeah, I think that they did a lot of great things for us. It's hard to pinpoint what the exact best value is, but I'd probably put it on the network. It's a little hard. It's a little abstract to understand kind of when you get accepted or when you're applying. But afterwards, you know, when you need to figure out how to solve a problem, you're constantly, in entrepreneurship, you're constantly provided with problems that you've never solved before. So, you know, talking to someone who's actually done that and done that really well is the best way to kind of figure out how to take the next step.
Okay, so you finish with Y Combinator, you build this network, you advance the product. What were you seeing that you felt weren't the right metrics in the business model, and how did you then pivot again?
Yeah, so I'd say, you know, one of the most important things that you should look for in entrepreneurship is to understand how much money you're spending a month and how much money you have in the bank, and you know, whether you have the ability to raise more money or when you're going to go out of business. So for us, it was pretty clear that we were going to go out of business on the current path, and we had to change what we were doing.
So sometimes it's called runway. What was your runway at this time?
I mean, we were to be able to travel to all these foreign countries was very expensive. To roll the software out, there was a large implementation time. The unit economics were not right at that time. These warehouses, you know, we're transforming people from pen and paper, but they were very frugal at the same time. And we were also creating a paper trail in the gray market, which didn't really excite people also. So there was like a number of reasons that we saw kind of the writing on the wall with our entrance into the market. And we see companies now doing something similar that are really going to kind of take advantage of the same problem that we saw.
And so you identified the things that weren't working, but what opportunities were you also seeing along the way?
Yeah, I mean, this opportunity we're talking about in terms of there's people who have products in warehouses and they need more places to sell them was really where we got into retail. And, you know, this was back in 2013. We started really selling products on Amazon. The first month was May in 2013. You know, we just linked one distributor basically in, and we saw what would sell. We automated all the data flow between product data, inventory, orders, and they would fulfill them, and then we'd get the tracking number eventually to the customer.
So wait, rewind a little bit, just so you identified that you saw all this product lying around in warehouses, and you're thinking, okay, there's all these other platforms that this particular customer could be selling them. Let's make an easier way for them.
Yeah. There was, and we saw a number of different situations. A lot of times these products were even getting to platforms like Amazon, but a lot of times in inefficient ways with mom and pop shops basically providing the data connection and very manual. And, you know, people were having frustration buying things on Amazon, as well as, you know, not all the products were getting listed as fast as they could. So there was breakdowns in the efficiency of what was going on.
You come in, your company is hugely efficient. What types of products do you look at initially?
We did everything we could get our hands on, basically. We built a great system that made product data easy to get onto these places, regardless of the category. I think that was a big tough problem that we had to solve initially.
And when you mean product data, do you mean number of units available, price, what it looks like?
Yeah, I think those are the some of the easier ones, but you know, different categories have different attributes that are really important for a customer to make a purchasing decision. So you know, our platform today, we have thousands of different attributes that you can supply that will eventually get to Amazon, and we can map that in a way that can also get to Jet, to Walmart, to Google. But to not jump too far ahead, you know, what we did is basically take this data in the way that they have it, and often it was spreadsheets or everyone had kind of different systems, And we would take this data and then automatically get the products listed, or match them to existing Amazon listings, and make sure they were not matched to the wrong one was another big problem. And then make sure that the inventory is hyper accurate. As soon as the order came in, we have to get it to there. We were doing shared inventory, which is very difficult for concurrency problems we had to solve. And, you know, we did, I think, $200 in May of 2013. And by December, we were doing like 400,000 on Amazon.
Dan, these are
alone.
incredible numbers. Walk us through the numbers again, please.
Yeah, so in May of 2013, we did about $200 in sales. And by December, basically all we were doing in the meantime was finding more and more people that could sell products, figuring out how they can get us data, which was, you know, very varying. We were sending purchase orders, everything through spreadsheets to plain text email to actually integrating into APIs.
And you're ingesting all this data.
Yes.
And you're doing it more efficiently than anybody else.
Yes. And that's where we're able to win on price, which is really important. And that's how we grew so fast, linking it to more people, more automation there. So $200 in May of 2013 up to 450,000 in December.
And so when you're so help a listener imagine what the products are that are going through your system. And when you say revenue, is that transaction value? So is somebody selling a bunch of, you know, denim jackets through your through your system? What are they selling, and how are you generating revenue?
Yeah, so you know, at the time we started off, I think electronics may have been our first integration, and we linked in through all the big ones, you know, Ingram Micro and Winit and all these other large electronics distributors. And then we also, you know, we sold everything from sports apparel was really big. We sold some other apparel. Beauty products were really big, perfumes. We started selling adult products. It sold crazy well. It was really, we didn't care too much about the category. As the only thing that we didn't really sell was like automotive products.
And who's setting the price?
So we would dictate the price. We'd have to build in our margins, and we'd have to automatically reprice to make sure that we were competitive in the market. And it was.
Are you looking at prices of competitors then to figure out what price to set?
Yeah. So we were targeting a certain margin to make sure that we have, you know, that we're running profitably on the bottom line. Again, this business model this came to be because we had this problem where we knew we weren't going to get the capital we needed, and we needed to get, as we called them, Subway sandwiches. Every sale was a Subway sandwich. We need to figure out how to get as many Subway sandwiches to feed us in a month. So that's how.
So when you say Subway sandwiches, you're saying Subway sandwiches for you to be able to eat and survive.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And we, you know,
this episode is sponsored to you by
Subway, yes,
startups run on Subway.
I'm framing it in a certain way. We weren't going to starve.
I know.
We had a nice, you know, cushy pad with our parents at the time. So
so you're just being nice. You just want your parents to know that you're really counting it in days to move out of mom and dad's pad.
I got to ask, though, like, if you're thinking about things in terms of Subway sandwiches and you had that runway, that pivot must have been huge in that development.
Yeah, I think it really was. It allowed us to, I mean, we were just having hyper growth in that. And I think that just having the problem of like, you really have to figure it out now was actually really beneficial for us to kind of go through.
And so your startup might be listening to this thinking, okay, kind of yada, yada, yada it a little bit. Have $200, now all of a sudden 400,000. All these customers are coming at us. How did they do it? What was the marketing strategy there to grow?
It was just really easy because we had Amazon basically, and that was our first major channel. And that was up until December was really, we were primarily Amazon. And then, you know, at the time, Jet was just sort of becoming this idea. They just raised a lot of money, Jet.com. And I had lunch with Mark Luray, their CEO, and when they were just kind of getting the bearings of what they were trying to build. And I told them what we had built on our end, and we launched with them. We were the largest launch partner by SKU count, and we were a top 5 seller for them through their beta until, you know, they kind of came to us with this new problem, which was, hey, you guys are doing really well with your merchant performance. Everyone else is not. People are not getting products on time. People are getting the wrong products. We have this big data issue, and you guys are doing this, and you don't even have the inventory in your warehouse, and you're doing way better than all these others.
The reason why you don't have inventory is you're drop shipping from a warehouse someplace?
Correct, yeah.
So you're never taking ownership of the products?
Right. We were taking flash ownership right at the point of sale.
Got it.
And so draw the little I know about Jet.com's business model came from listening to the NPR How I Built This on Jet.com and on the company itself. And from what I understand, their model is, hey, if you're going to be buying diapers, let's make sure you also get wipes, paper towels, all these other things from the same place. So talk to us about, is that how you fit into that business model, making it easier for people to buy multiple products from the same place?
Yeah, I think that they looked at the world a lot the way that we did. Amazon was a first-party marketplace, or a first-party seller for a really long time before they introduced a marketplace. The marketplace became a huge cash cow for them, but there were some inefficiencies with price when it came to adding products that should drop the price of the total price to the customer down. Mm-hmm. You should be incentivizing people to buy things. And we had built a lot of technology in general too to try to be smart about that. And they saw some of the similar problems that we were seeing. So we were really sold on a lot of their smart pricing technology that they built, and trying to build a cart for these retailers was really interesting for us.
And after you built on Amazon, you have this conversation with Jet. You're then on them too, or do you have to remove from Amazon to be on Jet?
No. So most people who are on Jet, I would say, unless you lost your relationship or something with Amazon, most of the Jet sellers are also on Amazon.
And how hard was it to build the second version, the Jet version, after the Amazon version?
I mean, it was pretty. Let's see. The integration probably took us about a month. It got a lot more efficient after that when we added additional sales channels. But it was kind of going from 0 to 1 is the hardest, and then 1 to 2, and then kind of going off that, we had a pretty good base.
And so talk to us about your company at the time. What did it look like?
Yeah, so it was my co-founder Danny and I, and that was it.
How many Subway sandwiches did you have?
That wasn't a very long answer.
Yeah, so we had some help overseas to help us with some of the customer service. That was one part that was not able to be completely solved with technology. And there was some smart stuff that we can do, but that was one problem that we had to grow with people.
And $400,000, this is not profit, that's revenue.
That's revenue. So yeah, that's top line GMV. So there would be the Amazon cut on that. We'd have to pay shipping costs and the item cost, and then everything left over is basically ours.
But you're not losing money on every sale. You're actually making a margin on every sale, even if it's a thin margin.
Right, yeah. At the time, we were doing about 5% margins.
Okay, so now fast forward a little bit. Just you and Danny, maybe open-minded about including someone with a name that didn't start with DAN. Needed it.
Yeah.
Had maybe gone through everyone you knew with those few letters. So what happened? What happened next?
Yeah, so this is kind of the problem that Jet was having at the time was merchant performance, and they're like, "How are you guys doing this? How should we think about solving this?" We just have no idea how you could be doing so well on your model compared to how these people are doing when they actually have the product in their warehouse. So we were like, it's all technology. We built a lot of stuff to make this efficient, and we'd love to show you. So they invited us to, I think at the time, I can't remember, they were in Montclair originally, and then I think that's where they still were when we went up, and we demoed this software that we had built for ourselves. And about 15 minutes into the conversation, they're like, you guys would be crazy not to open this up so other retailers can have the same efficiency that you have.
That was a pretty important meeting, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we kind of went back and we're like, things are okay. They're not great. The margins are really low. We had, when people are returning products 2-3 months later, it could also be difficult to understand exactly how to price things. And we looked at, we basically started doing customer profiles and just doing customer development and trying to figure out, all right, how do we get someone to try this? Is that going to be a good business model for us? And it took us about a month to decide and to kind of completely shut down our retail operation and just start as a SaaS platform now that's taking all this automation we built, slapping new lipstick on it, and selling this software. I think the other part of that too is that we realized we're great at building software, everything interesting about our business. We're able to drive high amounts of revenue, but it's not because we're great merchandisers. It's not because we have unique relationships. It's not because we're great at manufacturing. Can we use this software in partnership with someone who's great at that stuff?
So Joe was teasing before the episode started that I would likely ask what your unfair advantage was. Is that what you saw as your unfair advantage, the software development alone?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that our software is what is our unfair advantage. There are competitors in our space, but their software is not as compelling as ours. There's some bigger, older systems. Our biggest competitor is actually a publicly traded company doing over $100 million a year right now. But our advantage over them is, newer, better software.
You shut down the retail operation shortly after this meeting with the folks at Jet. You launched as a platform. How long did that take?
It was about a month from that meeting before we really just went kind of heads in, and this platform was launched.
And who's your first customer for the platform?
Yeah, so they were a company called Shively Sporting Goods. They were through a partnership that we found through a company called SKU Vault, and they were a similar company to us. They were a retailer that pivoted, their retail operation is still live, but they spawned out this inventory problem that they had, and we really kind of bonded on that because they're this warehouse management system, WMS system. And we bonded on that, and they're like, this other company is having all the problems you're describing. You should meet them. And I kind of just flew out to Louisville. That was kind of a crazy story too, because we had just gotten this new lipstick out, and we just revamped this product so now it can work in all these different ways that it needed to work. Now that many people are going to use it and needed their own kind of silo. As soon as I'm flying out there, I find out that they have this new kind of concept that we didn't take into consideration, where they have all this apparel and they need to be able to group it and to edit the data very easily in a way that we didn't need to solve before. So we had to hack away at night, and then I presented to them in the morning, pretending like we had this all along. And then they're like, oh, this is great, but we just really like to see things this way. This would be much easier than the way that you did it. And when I kind of texted an engineer we had, so at this point we had another engineer that we brought back from someone that I used to work with, or we all used to work with on HT Trade Services, and originally I found him through Stony Brook University, Ken, and I texted Ken and I said, hey, we need to do things this way. Can you do it by the end of lunch? And by the time we got back into the warehouse, boom, exactly what they needed.
Big shout out to Ken here on
Yeah.
Bootstrapped today.
So what, in your words, what do you mean when you say you're a platform?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So, there's a lot of different things that have to happen when you're selling online. There's a lot of different tools that solve different problems. And as a platform, what we're building is a centralized operation. So when someone starts using Zentail today, we sit in the center of all these other tools that they're using and make sure that all of the orders are coming in and flow to where they need to get. And then people can easily link into Zentail anything that they want to add for their e-commerce operation.
How do they do that?
So originally we were doing everything, because it's really difficult to kind of just go to this company and say, hey, our customer bases are pretty similar. I think that, there's some companies that we have that use you guys, and we really need this deep link, and have them integrate into you would have been too difficult. So originally we did kind of all the outbound links, figured out how they would prefer us to link in, and really kind of optimize that experience around what our customers' needs were at the time. And then now, as of this year, we actually just opened up an API, and now we are adding much more partners at a much faster rate now that people can actually link it to us.
Okay, so tell us, what is an API?
Sure. So that's it's sort of the way that two technology systems can interact. It defines all the different things that you can tell a software system and how to tell the software system that. So in terms of us, we can tell people, or people can tell us, hey, I'm an inventory system. There's this amount of this product in this warehouse. And then we can tell them too, hey, here's an order. It has this amount of products and it needs to go here.
And talk to us about the pros and cons of having open APIs into other systems.
Yeah, so I think I touched a little bit on it in the beginning. If you just release an API, sometimes it's difficult. You have to have a reason that people want to integrate into it. And for us, that reason was, all these great customers that they want to retain if someone chooses to use Zentail, right? Or they want to have access to all the Zentail customers. They want to be able to market to Zentail customers. That is all they have to do is buy, and then there's this deep link that happens that does this great thing. So I think that at first it's really difficult to kind of have that advantage, but there are lots of companies that just start off with just an API because there's something dying need that these companies need, and then for us, it allows us to scale much faster in our partner base, which adds a lot of value to the Zentail platform by having the open API rather than having us have to have a developer do every last connection.
How many customers are right now part of the Zentail platform?
We have, I'd say, hundreds and hundreds of customers at this point. We're approaching 1,000 fast.
And what's your kind of customer acquisition strategy now?
Yeah,
are you flying to Louisville again?
No, this is, we actually just hired a director of growth, another Bootstrapped participant, Paul Capriolo, started Social Growth Technologies, a longtime friend of Danny and I, and we were actually working out of his company's office for a long time, and kind of the world's just aligned for us to be able to work deeply together, and we're all really excited because things really have to kind of mold right for something like that to happen.
I think I'm going to have to ask one of our MBA students to do like a visualization of like the connectivity between all of our Bootstrapped guests.
I think it's
like
a good
one
idea.
of those celebrity kind of who dated who, those kind of things.
Well, if it's the Kevin Banky game, you're going to be the center of it, Alana, because you're the connector with many of these companies.
So we originally it was a lot of inbound. We had to somehow hack the system for people typing in the type of solution that we are, and competitors. People are really unhappy with their multi-channel solutions in general. So a lot of times people are just searching for this competitor, that competitor, and we figured out how to kind of get some easy SEO. A lot of it was inbound, and then referrals was kind of our big thing between partners and customers. Really happy people with the Zentail platform, telling their friends about it. And Danny, my co-founder, was the primary seller of Zentail for a really long time. That was kind of the other thing, is that we didn't actually hire another salesperson till less than a year ago. I guess it was fall of last year. We now have a 5-person sales team as of yesterday.
So if I'm a retailer, I want to sell things. I want to sell to as many channels as possible and have really cool dashboards to get an idea about how well it's selling. I go to Zentail.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many problems that get solved by having Zentail. It's just really we're trying to make e-commerce. It's our mission to make e-commerce simple for these retailers, and it's not just one feature. I could talk about so many different features that really make that so easy. I'd say product data was the one that really we were selling on the heaviest to start out, and the problem there is every channel takes data differently. Like I said earlier, there's thousands of different attributes you can use on Amazon, but certain are only relevant for certain categories. You have to take your products and categorize them for Amazon, and then categorize them for Walmart, which is, we were the first official partner of Walmart, privately held. Same thing with Jet.com, and now Google and Amazon as well. We take the data of this product, and we can automatically know what the product is, and then tell the channel what the category is for that product. So there's a bit of machine learning on the onboarding process to make that process really easy. We can map it to what's called a Zentail smart type, and then we can get all the attributes exactly how they want it. We basically saw that this attribute's the same on Amazon as it is on Jet. They just have different valid values, and the same thing on Walmart, and the same thing on Google Shopping. So we have one central system that makes that process really easy, which takes onboarding times down from months per channel to 2 to 3 weeks total.
And this becomes really important in retail, right? Because you got to move very quickly in the space to go ahead and keep up with fluctuating customer demand.
Yeah, and you need to make sure that your products are everywhere. Whether you're a brand or you're a retailer, if you're not on the major sales channels, then someone else is selling another product, and you're missing out on market share.
And so what do you see as the next couple years for Zentail?
Yeah, I think that it's a really exciting space in general to be a part of. E-commerce is really small right now compared to what it will be. It's already $500 billion industry in the U.S. alone, and that's doubling every 5 years right now. It's about 15% growth year after year, every year, and we expect that to get to at least 50% over the next 30 years or so. So I think it's a really exciting time to be a part of e-commerce, even though it feels like e-commerce is huge. It's nowhere near what it will be in the future. So I think for Zentail, our goal is just to really get this platform out there right now. Right now we have a very small percentage of the market. We're going to service about $1 billion this year of e-commerce, which, like I said earlier, is basically 0.2% of the total market. So
There's maybe some room for growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as my last question, you're a computer science grad, now you're an entrepreneur, growing company. Hopefully some of current students and other CS alums might be listening. What advice would you give to a student or recent alum or anyone looking to get into this space, the other skills that they should be thinking about if they wanted to launch, a business, data-driven business like this of any kind?
Yeah, I think one thing that you can gather from my story is that we didn't necessarily have the expertise in every kind of area to start off. And because of that, we kind of picked a poor entry point into a market. It's really difficult as a college student to have expertise in many things outside of being a college student. And I think that's why a lot of times the startup ideas that come out of college seem to be pretty similar, because you're trying to solve problems that you do know about. And you see, kind of all the time, how do I find my co-founder app and things like that. These are the most burning problems for a lot of people trying to start companies. But for us, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going this route, but we did something that we didn't know. We couldn't have had all the expertise. We didn't have, decades of experience doing, but because we kind of went at it and did it, we learned a lot, and then we pivoted, That was the only way that we could build up the expertise. A lot of times I've seen other people do kind of crazy other things, like, go to law school and be practicing patent lawyer, which is a company, I was advising that just went through YC and is crushing it. I would definitely recommend doing something you are an expert in if you want to not have, years and years of pain.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks for coming to studio. It was great seeing you. Great getting the update on your story. And we look forward to keeping tabs on Zentail as you continue to grow.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Ilana, this was such a joy for me to have Dan in studio. You know what a huge geek I am and how much I talk about APIs and platforms in my courses at the Smith School. And just a great story and wonderful to hear pivots. What did you learn from this?
Well, it was important, I think, for Dan to define what APIs and platforms mean to him, because I think those words are thrown around so much, and also to highlight some of the things you need to think about when connecting with other systems, particularly with so much emphasis on data privacy and data security right now. So I'm glad he touched on that.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, but the Facebook question about what data is available through their API and how people are using it is a big question. But in the retail space, I think Dan was really lucky that he and his team got a chance to get some outside advice from somebody, if they were crushing it as retailers, to recognize that you want to abstract that kind of platform away from it and make that technology available to everybody else. I don't know if they would have had that experience if they had not done HD Trade Services beforehand.
Right, and I think to me it just underscored the value of young entrepreneurs and how they really, when you see a team like Dan and Daniel, who were entrepreneurs at a young age, right out of University of Maryland, and able to learn some things on the way and be able to now apply it when they had like a big opportunity. I don't know. It was a nice validation of what we spend our time doing every day.
Well, I would say there's one thing that they did, which I would actually have coached them not to do. And I'm curious what your thoughts on this are. But remember, so they're going and they're getting $200 a month in retail sales. I would have said, don't invest a lot of money in technology. I would have said, look, that's just barely anything, kind of cobble together something. Don't worry about making something that's really scalable. But the only way for them to go from $200 to $400,000 was to have the right technology solution from day one. So they learned something in that early stage to get them scalability later on.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that sounds like, from listening to Dan, look back, that there's things that they have learned and things they would have done differently, but I think they learned them while bootstrapping and before they had significant amount of investment, and it seems like they've learned to run the business pretty efficiently. I don't think we had a chance to mention it, but they now have gone from like 3 to 30 employees in a very short amount of time.
Yeah,
so
they're growing
now
quickly.
They're growing when the demand is there in the market.
And of course, many investors are excited about the possibility of getting involved with platform companies because it scales so well, because there's ways to kind of bring on new customers without a long kind of onboarding process.
Yeah. Well, this was a great episode. It was great
I loved
to have
it.
Dan.
I have more platform
Dan, yeah.
companies. That's good with me.
And it's also good. It's nice to see. It's just we work so much with business students, and a lot of times we do have founders who have more business background, but it is really great to see a technical founder grow into being a business person the way that Dan and Daniel
no
have.
doubt about it. No doubt about it. And to just see kind of, Dan, you and I interacted with Dan, when he was pretty much a rookie kind of coming out of the University of Maryland, and just to see his growth and development as an entrepreneur, to be able to kind of grow from some of the setbacks and challenges, but to pivot and to scale, it's been great. And probably we didn't mention Matt Thomas, a Quest student. Just a shout out to him for also being part of that team.
Well, thanks for listening to another great episode of Bootstrapped, a Dingman Center podcast. I'm Ilana Fine. You can follow me on Twitter at Ilana Fine or at UMD_Dingman.
And I'm Joe Bailey. You can follow me on Twitter at Joseph P. Bailey. Thanks very much to our guest, Dan Sugarman, today. Thanks very much to all of our listeners for downloading and subscribing to Bootstrapped. And for everybody, we encourage you to think about bootstrapping your next venture.
Bootstrapped would like to thank its cast. Bootstrapped hosts Ilana Fine and Joe Bailey. Bootstrapped executive producer Oscar Santana. And associate director of the Dingman Center, Holly DeArmond. Remember to subscribe to our show on iTunes and leave a 5-star review.